right, so you sent over some really interesting articles about AI regulation.
Yeah.
And things seem to be heating up in Washington.
Mm.
And a lot of it seems to be because of this guy, Sam Altman,
Right.
CEO of OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT.
Yeah, it really is interesting how much influence he seems to have.
It's wild.
Even while the 2024 presidential candidates are pretty quiet about AI regulation,
Right.
Altman's really become like this central figure.
Yeah, and especially when you compare it to like Mark Zuckerberg and Meta's, constant battles with Congress.
Oh, totally.
The CNBC article we have, how OpenAI CEO Sam Altman's lobbying power tamed Washington, really dives into how different his approach has been.
It's very strategic. The initial panic around AI is kind of giving way to some new concerns.
Right.
Katie Harbath, who used to head public policy at Meta,
Right.
she points out that people are starting to worry about how regulation could stifle American innovation and give China a competitive edge.
So instead of resisting regulation,
Altman's leaning into it.
Exactly. He's really turned OpenAI into a serious lobbying force.
Wow.
They're investing heavily and bringing in people like Chris Lethane
Oh, wow.
to run their global affairs. He was a former political strategist from the Clinton White House.
Wait, Lethane?
Yeah.
Isn't that the guy who's making that comparison between AI and the New Deal?
That's him. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's arguing that the U.S. needs a New Deal scale approach to AI
Wow.
to maintain global leadership, in the 21st century.
Now, why do you think that argument resonates so much?
It's powerful for a couple reasons. I think first, it taps into this very American belief in technological progress
Right.
and how it connects to national strength.
Yeah.
And second, it frames AI not just as like a tech thing, but as critical infrastructure for the whole country.
Right.
Something that could revitalize American industry.
Okay, I'm starting to see how he's managed to flip the script.
Yeah.
Instead of AI being this scary unknown,
Right.
he's presenting it as the key to a brighter future.
A future where America stays on top.
Exactly.
But here's where I start to get a little nervous.
Yeah.
What happens when one company has this much sway
Right.
over something as powerful as AI?
That's a great question.
Like, what could go wrong if a company like OpenAI has this much influence over the people writing the rules?
Yeah, that's a question definitely worth exploring.
Yeah.
We should probably start with the potential economic consequences.
Okay, like monopolies?
Yeah, that's definitely a concern.
Okay.
Imagine a scenario where OpenAI, through their lobbying efforts, shapes regulations in a way that benefits their technology and shuts out competitors.
So they become the only game in town.
Right, and that could really stifle innovation and limit consumer choices.
Yeah.
So instead of having this vibrant, competitive AI landscape,
Right.
we end up with a single company dictating how this technology develops and who benefits from it.
And who's to say they'll always put the public interest first?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it gets even more complicated when you factor in the global implications of AI.
You mean like how AI could shift the balance of power between countries?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If companies are influencing policy with their own interests in mind, are they going to prioritize global cooperation and ethical standards? Or will it just become a race to the top no matter the cost?
Okay, so we've got this double-edged sword situation. On the one hand, you have Altman making this very convincing case for the importance of AI and America's leadership role.
Right.
But on the other hand, you have the potential for his company to use that influence to benefit themselves, potentially at the expense of competition, ethics, and even global stability.
It's a complex landscape for sure.
Yeah.
And understanding both sides of this is crucial for making informed decisions about the future of AI regulation.
Right.
We need to ask ourselves, if AI really is this defining technology of this century, who gets to control it?
That's a great point. It's not just about the technology itself. It's about the power structures that shape its development and use.
Exactly.
And that brings us to another set of potential risks, the societal impacts of AI.
Right. We can't forget about those.
Yeah.
How will AI affect our jobs, our privacy, our sense of agency in a world that's increasingly driven by algorithms?
Yeah, we'll dive into those next.
Exactly.
We were just talking about those big societal impacts of AI.
Right.
I'm thinking things like job displacement, privacy concerns, even just like how much control we have in a world increasingly run by algorithms.
Exactly. Let's start with jobs.
Okay.
it's pretty much inevitable that AI is going to automate certain tasks.
Right.
And that will lead to job losses in some sectors.
So the question is, how do we prepare for that?
Right.
Do we try to slow down the pace of AI development?
Oh, yeah.
Or do we focus on adapting to these changes?
Yeah, there's no easy answer. Some people believe that we should focus on retraining programs.
Okay.
To equip workers with new skills for this new economy. Others think that we need to consider more radical solutions.
Right.
Like universal basic income.
Oh, wow.
To provide a safety net for those who are displaced by automation.
It's a tough situation, and it's one where I think the influence of companies like OpenAI could have a major impact.
For sure.
If they're the ones shaping policy.
Right.
Will they prioritize solutions that benefit their bottom line?
Yeah.
Or the ones that benefit workers who are losing their jobs?
That's a key concern, and it connects to another big societal risk.
Okay.
The erosion of privacy.
Right. AI thrives on data.
Yes.
And the more data these companies have access to,
exactly.
the more powerful their systems become.
And if they're able to influence policy,
right,
they might push for weaker privacy protections.
Okay.
Making it easier for them to collect and use our personal data with less oversight.
Okay, so now I'm picturing a future where our online activity, our location data, even our conversations are being constantly monitored and analyzed.
It's not that far-fetched.
Right.
I mean, think about how much data we already share with companies like Google and Facebook.
But yeah.
Now imagine that data being fed into even more sophisticated AI systems that can predict our behavior.
Wow.
Target us with personalized advertising, or even influence our decisions.
It's a bit unsettling, to say the least.
Well, I agree.
It feels like we're giving up a certain amount of control, a certain amount of freedom, in exchange for the convenience and efficiency of AI.
That's the trade-off that we have to grapple with.
Right.
And it's a trade-off that could have profound consequences for our individual liberties and our democratic values.
So what can we do about it? How do we ensure that these powerful technologies serve humanity rather than the other way around?
That's where the discussion of regulation comes back in.
Okay, but we've already talked about how AI companies might try to shape regulations in their favor.
Right.
So how do we prevent that?
Yeah.
How do we make sure regulations actually protect the public interest?
Well, it starts with recognizing the potential for regulatory capture, which is when companies essentially hijack the regulatory process, making the rules work for them, not the public.
Can you give us a real-world example of how that might play out with AI?
Sure. Imagine OpenAI lobbying for regulations that create a really complex and expensive certification process for AI systems. Now, on the surface, this might sound like a good idea, ensuring safety and accountability.
Right.
But if those regulations are written in a way that only a company with OpenAI's resources can comply, it effectively shuts out smaller competitors and stifles innovation.
So it's a way of using regulation to create a barrier to entry and essentially solidifying their dominance.
Exactly. And that's why we need to be really vigilant about how these regulations are crafted and who has a seat at the table during the process.
Okay.
We need independent experts, ethicists, voices from civil society to make sure that the public interest is represented.
This all feels very complex and honestly a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Is there any reason to be optimistic about the future of AI regulation?
Well, there's always reason to be optimistic.
Okay.
But it requires us to be informed, engaged, and willing to hold both companies and policymakers accountable.
So it's not just about letting the experts handle it. We all have a role to play in shaping this future.
Absolutely. And that's where the conversation expands beyond national borders.
Okay.
You know, AI is a global phenomenon.
Right.
And its impacts will be felt worldwide.
We were talking earlier about how AI could shift the balance of power between countries.
Right. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
Sure. Imagine a scenario where a country with advanced AI capabilities uses those capabilities for surveillance, military applications, or even to manipulate information and influence elections in other countries.
Okay, now that's moving into some pretty scary territory.
It is, and it highlights the need for international cooperation.
Right.
And agreements on ethical standards for AI development and deployment.
So are there any efforts underway to address these global challenges?
There are organizations like the United Nations are working to develop guidelines for responsible AI.
Okay.
And there are ongoing discussions about creating international treaties to prevent an AI arms race.
It sounds like there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah.
But at least there are people out there thinking about these big picture issues and trying to find solutions.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for us to stay informed and engaged in this conversation.
Right.
The choices we make today about AI regulation will have a profound impact on the world we create tomorrow.
For sure. You know, we've spent this deep dive exploring all these potential downsides of AI.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a little unnerving.
It can be.
But are there any reasons to be optimistic? Is anyone working on solutions, to make sure AI is used ethically and responsibly?
Well, it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good.
There's actually a growing global movement focused on responsible AI development.
Okay.
And we're seeing researchers, policymakers, even tech companies themselves starting to prioritize ethical considerations.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
What are some of the most promising solutions they're looking into?
One key area is transparency.
Okay.
For AI to be trustworthy, we need to understand how it works.
Right.
Think of it like a recipe.
Okay.
If you're allergic to peanuts, you wouldn't eat a dish without knowing the ingredients.
Right.
Similarly, we need insight into the data used to train AI systems,
Okay.
the algorithms that drive them, and the potential biases they might have.
So instead of these black box AI systems where we don't really know what's going on inside.
Exactly. We need more openness.
We need more openness, and that transparency allows for accountability.
If we can see how an AI system reached a decision, we can identify potential biases or flaws and hold the developers responsible.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But transparency alone doesn't guarantee ethical AI, does it?
You're right. It's just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
Another crucial aspect is building safeguards into AI systems from the very beginning.
Okay.
This involves embedding ethical principles into the design process itself.
So instead of trying to fix problems after they happen, we need to build ethics into the core of these technologies.
Precisely. It's like building a house.
Okay.
You wouldn't wait till the roof is leaking to add support beams.
Right.
You design those supports in from the beginning.
Right.
Similarly, ethical considerations need to be foundational elements of AI development.
That's a great analogy. And it makes this whole concept of ethical AI seem much less abstract.
Yeah.
And more practical.
It's all about shifting the mindset.
Okay.
We need to move beyond thinking of AI just as a tool for efficiency or profit and recognize its impact on society.
And that brings us back to regulation.
Yeah.
How can we make sure regulations are effective in shaping AI development for the better?
Well, one important step is creating independent regulatory bodies.
Okay.
With the power to oversee AI development and enforcement. These bodies should be staffed with experts in AI ethics and law.
Okay.
And be free from influence from the companies they regulate.
So avoiding that regulatory capture thing we talked about.
Exactly. We need strong, independent oversight to make sure regulations serve the public.
Okay, so that addresses the national level.
Right.
But what about the global implications of AI?
Yeah.
How do we ensure international cooperation?
It's a tough challenge.
Yeah.
But there's growing momentum towards global agreements.
Okay.
On ethical AI development and deployment.
Okay.
This could involve things like sharing best practices, coordinating research efforts, and even establishing international treaties to prevent misuse of AI for harmful purposes.
So kind of like how countries came together to address climate change.
Exactly.
Or nuclear proliferation.
Yeah.
Recognizing that AI is a global issue that demands global solutions.
Absolutely. We need a collective effort to shape AI in a way that benefits all of humanity.
This has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has.
We started by unpacking Sam Altman's strategy and, talking about the downsides of corporate influence on AI regulation.
Right.
Then we explored the societal risks.
Yeah.
And finally, we talked about, reasons for optimism and potential solutions. It's a really complex landscape.
It is.
But I think the key takeaway for our listeners is that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI.
I completely agree. By staying informed, engaging in these conversations, and holding both companies and policymakers accountable, we can help steer AI development towards a future that benefits us all.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder this. If AI truly is the defining technology of our time, what kind of future do we want to create with it?
Yeah.
And what role will you play in shaping that future?